this is me. This is a 0 because I'm leet like that. This is the Steve O with a 0. And this is all the places you can find me. If you want, these are all HTML slides. I use Reveal.js. So that link will get you to the slides as well. All right, it's also talks.thesteve0. For all the old people in the back who can read that line all the way at the top, it's like myself, talks.thesteve0.com/microservices. I figured that would be easy to remember. Or take a picture of it if you want. So today I'm going to talk about microservices. How many of you have been to every single one of the other microservices talks that has happened here at Devnexus? I promise not to bite if you actually raise your hand. Really, this is audience participation. How many of you have been to the other microservices talk? Okay, so only a few of you, so fresh minds. This is probably going to be different than all the other microservices talk, mostly because I'm not going to be talking about too much specific technology. Well, you'll see my opinions in a little bit about microservices. So let's go ahead and get started. The agenda today is microservices, pros and cons. How many of you have used microservices? Or done, you have, there's a few? Okay, so I'm also very informal. I love when people also give feedback and talk and ask questions. As you noticed, I've already asked you guys a couple questions. Feel free to interrupt me at any time. This is a long talk, so I feel like we have time to talk. And also, if you want to chime in with one of your own personal experiences, I'd love to hear that too. So we're going to go over microservices, pros and cons, and then we're going to see it in action. So I have actually got like a live demo running of a bunch of microservices. Because I figure most talks, they show one technology and it's some little toy thing. This is a little bit bigger than that. So I get extra points for difficulty on this one. These are the only assumptions I'm making. You understand the web in the abstract sense, like you've written a web app before, right? And you've got some back-end services. Is that a good assumption for everybody here? I feel like that's a pretty good level set that I can talk to most people. If not, you probably wouldn't be at Devnexus. So I want to give you some background on why I wrote this. This is you after using microservices. I want to give some background about why there's been it's been about 2 years brewing all this microservices talk, right? And it's obviously, given that there's about 600 talks on microservices at Devnexus, it's obviously really starting to hit its peak. And so I want to give why I actually started picking up microservices about a year ago. As a developer advocate, a lot of times we write small demo apps, but that doesn't really give us a taste for writing full applications. So I love Red Hat, and I love my company, because they've said, yeah, you can write a full app. Go ahead, because you really need to do that to understand developers and be able to talk to them. So I said, okay, I'm going to learn microservices. I'm going to try it out, so I'm not just spouting off about how great they are. And I'm going to build it on an app I care about. And one of the things I care about is actually roadkill. Not because I like to eat it, but because it is it's a huge non-point source of animal mortality. So actually, in my former life, I'm a conservation biologist. I actually have a PhD in ecology. And so what I mean by non-point source mortality, I used to work on the wind turbines. I was doing conservation planning on the wind turbines in California, and that's considered a point source of bird mortality, right? Birds fly into it, they die, they're right there, everybody sees it, everybody gets upset. It's originally like when there was a pipe coming out into the stream, everybody sees the pollution coming in, everybody gets upset at that plant, that's the worst plant ever. But usually what's the bigger problem are non-point sources. Everybody fertilizes their lawn, it all runs off into the water, all the fish die from the fertilizer and the pesticide, but nobody's to blame. Because it's everybody's lawn and you don't see it. So one of the things, I was working on this project with the wind turbines, and everybody's getting upset with the wind turbines, and I was, if you actually pay attention to the side of the road, or you walk along the side of the road, there's a ton of dead animals, not just skunks and possums, which most people don't, and raccoons, which most people don't care about, but like birds of prey. In the United States, you're actually supposed to get it's against the law to kill a hawk. And yet cars kill them all the time, and nobody's getting violation citations. So the point of this, little did you know, you get a little conservation biology talk in here too. The point of this was I wanted to build an app to crowdsource roadkill. Right? I wanted to do ways for roadkill. I thought that, and I love maps. I love mapping. My background is in mapping. So I thought that would be pretty fun. So I built a pretty, can you see that in the back? Not at all. This is the one thing I don't like about Reveal.js. It doesn't let me increase the size of the pictures. This is the user's device on a phone. These are web services, REST endpoints that I'm used to build this. So there's a data entry service, a user service, and a gaming service. You can't really do crowdsourcing unless somebody feels like they're winning a prize, right? So there's obviously a game service built in. In a lot of microservices, they'll actually have separate databases for all of them. I decided, no, I don't want to do that. I actually like that they all are talking to each other, but these are each a separate REST endpoint. Each of these are going to be running in JBoss EAP. So when I talk microservices, how many of you think of EAP as the microservice container of choice? Exactly. That's because you've all been fed that Spring Boot, like, oh, we're the cool new technology, and if you're not running Node or Spring Boot, you can't do microservices. And I'll explain why that's bullshit in a minute. Is there a code of conduct where I'm not allowed to say bullshit? Sorry? Okay, Drop Wizard, fine, you're another cool kid. Who's using Vertex? Who's using Node? Sinatra? Okay, it doesn't have to be like that. And then I'm using IronMQ to do the messaging in between them, right? So I'm using a message queue. And then right now, the app isn't fully running because I've got a day job that I have to do other things. But these are all running, and we're going to run these today, and we're going to watch them in action, okay? So excuse me while I fire up this demo. How many of you know Mel Brooks? And then you've seen Blazing Saddles? I was going to put excuse me while I whip out my demo, but then I thought that was not going to be okay with the policy of the place. Even though if you've seen the movie, it's not. Okay, anyway. So here's the end the REST services, right? This is just one taste of them. They all spit back JSON. So this is ffuser-flatfluff.rhcloud.com/ws, and it gives back all the users, okay? There's also a way to put in users, and we'll actually be testing that. This is data entry, so you can see that it puts in a position, and then some other things about the thing that got put in. This is where you actually saw it, and then here's the gaming service. And so these are the prizes, like what you've done, and so when someone does a sign up, they'll actually get a badge, right? They've gotten the badge. Welcome to signing up. You know, people, the millennials, they need encouragement right away. So you signed up. Yay! You're awesome. I believe in you, right? So they get a badge right away for signing up. And so that's going to happen through the messaging service. You sign up through the user service, but that then sends off a message to the game service to give the person a badge, okay? So this is part of, so these are the REST endpoints. And I'm going to test it all with BlazeMeter. How many of you have heard of BlazeMeter? None. How many of you have heard? Yes, someone in the back. Alone will be very happy that you're here. How many of you have used JMeter? How many of you have hated up setting up the servers and getting it all running? BlazeMeter is JMeter in the cloud. So what I've done is I've written well, actually, the BlazeMeter guys and I wrote a JMeter script and uploaded it, and it's just going to run it for us. Okay, so what this is actually doing, I would like you all to now quickly read through the JMeter test script here. Okay, ready? And there, you got it, what it's doing? Actually, what it's doing is, it's actually a pretty complicated script from my perspective. What it's going to do for me is it's going to fire a bunch of AWS servers up and run JMeter on them. And then what it's going to do is it's going to start creating users. It's also going to have users randomly putting in kills. It's also going to be starting to award rewards to users. And it's actually going to be doing GET requests as well. So we're going to put a bunch of load on a bunch of the different REST endpoints. And I just needed to give that all preface because it takes a while to start up, right? Because we're going to be using, I forget how many users it is, but we're going to be using about 500 threads in JMeter. So it's a pretty decent service. Okay, launch those servers. Okay, and we'll come back and check on that. So now, let's talk microservices. So most of my thinking on this, Martin Fowler has a page. Talks about on Fowler.com or whatever, and that's the link to it up there in the orange. And he talks about microservices. So I'm going to quickly do a level set so everybody understands what a microservice is versus traditional. And I'm assuming most of you here are Java developers. Is that a good assumption? Including the Drop Wizard guy, the cool kid. He hasn't made the switch to Node yet or Vertex. So this is what most of us have grown up writing. Is that true? Monolithic services, where we have all the services on the same server. There's, like my 3 different services, each one of these could represent one of the services. Right? And then there's also probably some admin service, and there's another one, right? And you put them all on one box. And then if you start experiencing load, or you want to test it, or you want to test any one of these services, you have to reboot all the services, right? Or you have to scale up by adding more of the exact same box. The idea with microservices is you take each of these individual services and break them out so that they can be mixed and matched however you want on different servers. And this gives a lot of flexibility in a lot of different ways. One of the primary ways is the cadence for this orange blob team can be very different from the red circle team. So let's say this is the hipsters and doing the UX, and they have a very fast cadence. You know, the UX people like to iterate quickly. Back-end people dealing with database stuff, maybe not as much. And so what the benefit here is these people, because they're hip, they're using Node or Drop Wizard, right? And these people here, because they're not as hip, they're doing back-end stuff, They're using what's not as hip, WebSphere. Okay, that was my Red Hat little propaganda there. So they can use completely different technologies as well, right? And they can have different styles, which in this case doesn't work so well, right? The other difference is, well, I'll show you one of the other differences in a second. If you were using this in the cloud, which is most of us are supposed to be working towards, how many of you are actually doing something in a cloud-like infrastructure? It could be even within your own company. So most of you have started, and most of you will probably be there by the end, even if it's internal. The other benefit to this is, let's say, it looks like the oranges and reds are always together, right? Let's pretend these are high memory usage services. And this one, the pink one is really CPU intensive. You could buy or provision really high memory things for these servers, and then actually have these servers be more CPU intensive, right? So you're not buying some generic hardware that's running all the things the same way. So it gives even more flexibility in terms of how you provision stuff. The other thing is, if there's a lot of load to the front end, you can start scaling up more front end without having to worry about, if the back end's doing fine, you don't have to scale up a whole nother machine and have this service sitting there waiting for nothing, right? So there's actually a lot of benefits to microservices. That's what I get for putting on my big belly. Gets knocked off. All right. If you take nothing else home from this talk today, this is the point I want you to take home. In any of the people that were talking about microservices from the beginning, there are no requirements. If I could spell right, that would actually say requirements. There are no requirements for language or app servers. Drop wizard guy. Okay? Notice I'm writing all my microservices in EAP. Does that mean they're not microservices? Shh. No, they are still microservices. You don't, if for those of you who went to other talks, how many talked about Akka? Did anyone go to the Akka talk and Scala? Yeah, you saw that one? Did you feel like after you went to that talk, if you don't do it in Akka, you're like a loser? Sorry?
Damn right.
Yeah, so I'm here to tell you, you are okay just the way you are. Okay? There is no requirement that you have to use the latest and greatest technology to do that, to do microservices. Okay? Anybody telling you anything else is trying to get you to adopt some technology or has some inferiority complex about their own technology. Okay? You can do it in whatever you want. There might be tools like DropWizard that might make it easier, or Node that might make it easier for certain use cases, but that doesn't mean you still can't if all your team knows is EAP, that doesn't mean, oh, well, we can't do microservices because all we got is EAP. That's not true. We're running Oracle, can't do it. That doesn't mean that. Well, it means a lot of other things if you're running Oracle, but it doesn't mean that you can't do microservices, okay? There's actually very little talk of any technology at all in terms of microservices. So feel comfortable leaving here that you too can do microservices without having to adopt some new cool kid technology. So this is the part where we're going to actually get into the hard part. This is how most of you probably work right now, right? This is the DBAs. Most of you are probably right here, the middleware specialists. And then you have UI and UX specialists. Is that correct for most of your teams? Right. This ends up with the big monolithic apps that we write today. And so with microservices, this is what you should be doing. This is a cross-functional team here, right? You have, I don't remember who was who. I think that was the DBA, because they're sad. And then this is the UX person, and then this is you, right? And so you have cross-functional teams. And those teams own the service. And it's up to them to decide, well, up to them in the kind of global sense. I mean, your company may say, we're never running Ruby, and I would applaud them. But they just may say, you're never running Ruby, so you can't write this in Ruby. But it's still up to them to choose their technology. Just because the inverted red triangle says, we're running EAP, this team can say, oh, he's our boss, so we're going to run DropWizard, right? But you can choose your technology. You get to communicate amongst each other. You can't have the thing like, I'm building and I'm going to put in a change request to the DBA and then have to wait 5 weeks for a schema change, right? The idea is you're integrated together from the beginning. And I would actually say, put your sysadmin in this box as well. If you get her involved from the very beginning, she will be much more helpful in helping you determine what you're going to do. There was one more point I was going to make about this. Oh, so they also talk about, see, organized around capabilities because Conway's Law. Does anybody know what Conway's Law is? Anyone want to raise their hand if they know what Conway's Law is? Yes, now you have to say it out loud.
Your organizational structure will impact the code you write.
Yes, and it also, the size of the organization, the more links you have, the harder it is to communicate, right? So the idea with this is there'll be a point person who's talking to this person, to this group, someone who's a point person on this group, right? So you have these teams talk across probably a person or one or two people because you want some redundancy. But the other great part about this is you can write your code however you want, and this team can write their code however they want, and you're going to agree on just the specification of what you're trading back and forth, right? There's no deep integration, so it doesn't have to be we're going to deeply integrate, and therefore we have to talk all the time because our objects have to match up exactly, and blah, 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 blah. No, it's just like, okay, you're going to make a request that looks like this, and I'm going to send back JSON that looks like this, or XML if you want to do XML, doesn't matter, right? So it actually makes life a lot easier. So the hard part, yeah. Forget it, you don't get a question then. But no, you did say that you had gone to the other one and you felt bad after leaving that, and I made you feel good, so.
Is a prerequisite, though, some homogeneous communication layer between services?
You have to agree on the communication layer between the services. I don't think it has to be homogeneous. I mean, I would... It's basically you just have to agree on the idea is you agree on a contract. There are some things which are easier to do that with and be able to change that contract easier. One of the other things I like to say about microservices is, so we all remember capital W web services, right? And for all of us who had to struggle or even looked at a book of it and like twisted our brain trying to think about web service.star, trying to implement any of that SOAP, XML, blah. And that basically killed, I was like, I'm out. This is way too complicated. REST is kind of the analogy that came along. It was like human readable web services, right? Human scale web services. And so what microservices to me is human scale SOA, right? For all of you who've struggled with SOA or not struggled with SOA because your tooling's really good, is that it takes tooling and it's hard to debug and it's really hard to figure out what's going on in a way that's even worse than what you'll see here. And so I think it's really what your team agrees to as the contract. I think the thing, though, that microservices really talks about a lot, and this is part of the decoupling, is that usually, although I'm no microservice safarian where I'm going to say it has to be this way or it's nothing, is usually it's asynchronous communication, right? Because you don't want the state of your service to basically lock up if someone's rebooting their service. So usually, and the recommended practice is to have an asynchronous communication pipeline. Okay? Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. So these hard parts, if I remember how I did my slides correctly, are in the order of hardness, or at least the very first one is. This is the hardest part of my microservices. That's it. It's not a technology problem. This technology problem is pretty simple. When I said how many of you work like that other teams where there's DBAs and middlewares and UI people, almost everybody in the room raised their hand, right? And the hard part is going to be going back and convincing whoever's in charge of personnel that no. You know that whole structure you have where the middleware team sits on floor 5 and the DBAs sit over here? And no, that's not good. We actually need to mix all the teams up, right? So I think the hardest part about implementing microservices, and there's a great blog post about this, where they say, you are not doing microservices or something like that. Sorry, you're not doing microservices or something. And the person basically points out that you're not doing cross-functional teams and you're not doing this kind of work. So basically what you're doing is the same kind of stuff you did before, right? So I believe this is actually in almost all the work stuff I've ever seen, technology is almost never the problem. It's almost always political and people. So pay attention to that part. What I would say to counter this one is get a clandestine group together. I'm covering up the camera so I'm not on tape saying this. Get a clandestine group of people together who are interested in trying this out and start on some small greenfield project, right? And just do it in whatever % time you get or whatever. Just say, you know what? You find a person who does UI, a person who does middleware, a DBA who's been friendly, a sysadmin who's all been friendly to this, and then try to do it together. And then show it. That's going to probably be the easiest way to do it. as it is with most stuff. Code talks, other things walk. How do you test, deploy, and manage all of this? Right, so that is the big problem. Another big problem that people bring up is the big counter to this. If you're running your application, like the monolithic model, there's one JVM on that server, right? And so it's very easy to monitor that JVM and to know what's going on. There's one network connection in and out of that server, maybe two, but there's not many. And so it's very easy to figure out what's going on. And testing it, it's on that one server. Like you saw, I had to write a big JMX script, and that's not even like a full functional test. That's just like executing some web service stuff and see if I get the stuff I want to have happen. So this part is actually hard. I'm going to show some tools today that I use to help make this better. Maybe I'll try to talk quieter and move it to some place that won't get knocked as much. Am I too loud now, or is it still good? Still good? All right. So I'm going to show some tools today, but I think this is going to, it also changes the way you think about tooling. And I mean tool in a very broad sense. And then another hard part is most people don't get greenfield apps. And so this is actually quite a hard task, especially on a really embedded monolithic app where everything's tightly coupled, right? So this is, I'm not even going to talk about this today. There's other people who talk about it, but it's a hard thing to do, right? You have to start learning how to cleave pieces off and small bites. Didn't boil the ocean, and you can't boil the ocean all at once. Whatever. Can't eat an elephant all at once. I don't know. I'm a vegetarian. I can't say that one. And I want to, this is okay, so I lied. The one take-home message was, what was the first take-home message? You all failed. No, you already talked. I don't need teachers' pets in here. Come on, someone else. I promise not to bite. What? Thank you. There's no app server or technology requirements. You guys, that was one, you had one job. The other one that you can kind of be your job is, it's not right for all applications, right? So it's not like, microservices all things. Don't do that. That's bad, right? There are certain cases where you do want tight coupling. Like if speed is really essential, microservices is not a good idea. I mean, really think about what essential means to you and what does speed mean. But it's not a good idea because we're going to be doing a whole bunch of asynchronous messaging, which is definitely going to be adding latency as opposed to them both being on the same machine, maybe even sharing the same memory space, right? So don't microservices all things. So tools to help. So of course, because I work on OpenShift at Red Hat, I think a platform as a service is important. How many of you know what a platform as a service is? How many of you got my book from the Red Hat booth? And so you should be able to answer the question about what a platform as a service is now. We were giving away books. It's available free as a PDF as well. Platform as a service allows you to quickly spin up the application infrastructure. So infrastructure as a service, Amazon AWS, that's spinning up hardware. Right? You still have to put the OS on it and install the application servers and do all that stuff. Platform as a service is one level above that. And so what platform as a service allows you to do is quickly automate spinning up and trying out new things. And what I'll show you hopefully today, if the test ran right, is that look, one of the things, I have slides on it. I'll show you one of the things that OpenShift does. External services in a private or public cloud. Right? So one of the things that we're trying to do with microservices is decoupling things. And so that you might actually set up a logging service that acts as a log drain to all of your different microservices. So that's what I mean. Like sometimes it's better to move it out into a separate service. And I'm going to be using I'll show you some of those today. Okay, like BlazeMeter. That is an example of an external service. Well, that would be easier to set up inside. And then these are helpful, right? Micro frameworks. Does everybody know what I mean when I say micro frameworks? What's a macro framework? Struts. What's the one most of us hate the most? If I said JSF, how much would most of you feel about that? Okay, there was a laugh and then a couple of nods. Is it generally, do most people hate working with JSF for the most part? Yeah. So one of the things that happens with micro frameworks is that micro frameworks also gets into clear separation of concerns, right? What are server developers good at usually doing? Working with data and moving data around. How good are they usually at building a nice user-intuitive front end? Witness all the web pages from like 2000 where all the server developers were writing bad PHP code and all those nice websites and disgusting, right? So in general, be good at what you're good at. So the idea is with all these micro frameworks, the server accepts URLs with certain things on them, and these things help you interpret those URLs or grab things out of them, and it spits back JSON. It spits back data, and that's it. Nothing but data leaves the server. The talk before me, the security guy, who, because he was using a Mac, didn't get reds on the projector, Fedora all the way, he actually was talking about how server-side generated code is a huge security vulnerability. And it can be. So he was also advocating this. So this is also good from a security perspective. Because if all I'm doing is interpreting a URL and all I'm doing is sending back data, it becomes much harder to inject stuff into the code. So Sinatra, Flask, this is for Python, whatever your favorite one is. Okay? And API generators. So with this, you actually, like Swagger. Have you guys heard of Swagger? Yeah, so I think the biggest one right now is probably Swagger. We use it on OpenShift on our new version. Basically what these do is these automatically generate APIs and documentation. Right? And so it's really, the APIs become self-documenting, and they update themselves every time you update the API. So what is that good for? Remember, we have contracts between teams. So if you go and change your code, and the person who you changed it on, that line was broken and you didn't communicate your change, that team can still look back and see what got changed and how they should work around the documentation, right? Because documentation is a hard part for a lot of teams. And the more you can automate this, so that's one thing I will say. No, I won't say all things. Nothing all things. But automate as much as you can. And what this does, and this does, and this does, is help you get to an automated place, right? Where it's not a human trying to do everything that that's trying to get done. Because that doesn't scale, and it usually goes wrong. Eventually. Any questions? Are we good so far? Okay, so the benefits, I already talked about some of these. Easier maintenance, right? You only have to maintain one piece. Easier communication. More team autonomy. I basically talked about all of these. More automation of grunt work. How many of you like writing scripts? Configuration files, I mean. How many of you like writing configuration files? How many of you like updating DNS entries? Yeah, so this is the kind of stuff that those tools help to automate, right? Because humans and then how many of you like it when you update a DNS entry and screw up the entire network and it's on you? Nobody does, right? So you just want something that automates, like there is a company that I went to go talk to, one of the users of OpenShift, because we do DNS propagation. Their ops team was like, their security team was like, no way. Nobody touches DNS entries unless you fill out 5 forms and it takes and it's got to go through all this stuff. And they said, oh, well, actually the platform will be publishing the DNS entries. You just give us a range and the platform will do it through this. And they're like, oh, okay, that's fine. Here you go. Right? So they don't trust humans to go in and monkey with their files. But if they know it's a repeatable code thing, they're like, oh, okay, that's fine. I know that as long as I can look at the code and I know what's going on, I'm fine with it. So that's why automation helps. And so this statement comes from my therapist. So if you've been to my talks before, you've heard that. And I'm going to talk about it again, though, because it was like one of those thunderbolt moments. So I was talking about some other people issue in my life. And I'm divorced, to give you a hint. And so what she said was, Stephen, I've heard this from some other people. It might be helpful for you. Clear boundaries, infinite possibilities. Right? And the idea behind that is when there's murkiness in a relationship, or who's responsible for what, or who's doing what, or who's in charge, or what the rules are to engage with each other, that's when problems start. Right? That murkiness, that non-clear definition is where, that's like how territorial battles start inside of companies too, right? Oh, I thought I was in charge of that. No, that's my first, I hate that person, I hate that team's the worst, we're the worst. So the idea with this is, all this stuff with microservices and the automation helps make clear boundaries. Oh, I'm in charge of service X, and I'm responsible that it responds this way and accepts these URLs, right? And that we've agreed on that contract, and as long as both of us obey that contract, I can do whatever I want on my side of the fence. You don't care what I'm doing under the hoods. I can do whatever I want, but I'm still obeying the contract, and it's none of your concern. So we don't have to fight about it. We don't have to have a pissing match about, I can't believe you're using Node. We're a Java company, and that team's using blah, blah, blah. It's none of your business. Who cares? As long as the ops team signed off on it and somebody else signed off on it, I don't care. The API worked, right? And that's the same thing with the automation. We did the automation. We all agreed this is what the script would do. It did it. I didn't mess anything up. You didn't mess anything up. We made the script, and it does what we said we were going to do. So This is one of the benefits, one of the biggest benefits, I think, is the clear boundaries, infinite possibilities. Now my whole life is this way. Now with my girlfriend, who I've been with for 2 years, when we have discussions, I'm like, clear boundaries. We don't have a clear boundary here. We had a huge discussion. Never mind. I'll finish it up because it's not kind of nice to leave it that way. We were having a huge discussion about money, because how many people in their relationship have a problem with money? Oh, liars, liars, liars. Money, sex, and kids, no matter heterosexual, homosexual, no matter what, those are the biggest problems. Money, sex, and kids. So nobody raised, like 4 people raising their hands. Thank you for being truthful, you 4 people. But what it came down to, as we kept talking and talking and talking about it, is we had unclear expectations with each other about how money was going to be handled. She was in one place and I was in another. And because of that muddiness, it caused all sorts of strife. Lesson learned. So that's the third message. I've got 3 messages, only 3 take-homes. 3 now. By the end, we'll be up to about 15. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about scaling yet because I think I was going to... Can we skip the scaling thing for a minute? Just because I want to see how our demo's doing. We're going to check the cake in the oven. Don't want it to burn. So, didn't help to put it there either. Let's go ahead and look at the demo. So one of the first things we should... Let me check the blaze meter first. Okay, so is this the one running right now? Today is not February 18th. Where is my test? It said it started, right? Let's go here. A few seconds ago. Is that the one that we're doing? Okay, it's not showing anything here, which makes me sad. But let's actually check. One of the ways we can check is all of my applications I built have load balancers in front of them. OpenShift automatically puts a load balancer in front of a service, right? And so this is the HA proxy page, and the numbers you care about are down here. Oh, I'm too loud. Or down here, right? This is the sessions and the bytes in and out. So when I refresh this page, hopefully that number will magically be a lot larger, because this is the user service. The fact that it's taking longer is a good sign. Or the Wi-Fi's down. It's looking like the Wi-Fi. Come on. You have 1 test running. That's great. How do I look at it? And 13 reports. Okay then. Let's go back to the other page. Nice. This is the part where I lose points even though I tried something really difficult. Let's see if the IronMQ is doing more stuff. So here's IronMQ. Right? This is what I'm using for my messaging service. The add new user and the new kill recorded both fire off events. So let's see if the Wi-Fi gods are with us. Thanks, Devnexus. Okay, so while that's going, we're going to actually go back to slides for a minute, and I'm going to fire up my MiFi and hope that... Who's got a Verizon phone? This is the only time in the talk you're allowed to pull out your phone. Do you have good bars here? Oh, the numbers, they updated, right? There's higher numbers. So the service is actually running. You've got 3 bars, and I've got my MiFi. So I'm going to turn it on. And then if we still run into these same problems. So you can see the number of messages here has changed. The number of new kill records has changed. App dynamics. Oh, I forgot to do the password. Okay, everybody don't look. I can never remember this password. It's like some... Okay, don't. Close your eyes. Thank you for looking down. Honest man here in the front. If I had a prize, I'd give you one too. The rest of you. I know. That was a very fuzzy boundary. Good call. So why are you not breaking out? There's errors happening. Here we go. Why are you only seeing 1 node? Should be seeing 3. So what it's seeing the user node. but it's not seeing my other nodes. Let's see what if I go to the last 5 minutes. No load detected in the There's an app dynamic. So I'm using App Dynamics here. If you go to the App Dynamics conference that was back in the fall, you can actually see the whole thing working. I don't know why it's not actually why I'm not seeing my other nodes. So that we're getting errors with this service, right? And then we can actually with App Dynamics. So this is getting into that whole big ball of mud thing, right? So that was actually, I don't know why it's not showing the server because this is actually WS points. This is actually in my data entry service. But it's showing that I'm getting exceptions. So imagine, this would be easy to do if we were in a monolithic service, right? We'd have that one server and we could check all of them. Here I've got 3 different services, and what App Dynamics usually lets me see, oh, now it sees all 3 of them. Let's see if it goes back here and actually gives me the diagram I want. No, you don't. Why? Usually what you would be expecting to see here is there'd be 3 nodes, and each of them would have an arrow, one going to the 2 arrows coming off it, one going to the message queue and one going to the database, right? So like right now, the user service is doing 154 calls a minute, and the response time is about 35 milliseconds. And remember, this database is on a totally different service, right? And then we're doing about 10 calls a minute from the FF user service, and it's about 51 milliseconds in response to that. So this is something that makes App Dynamics, when it shows the whole thing, is a much easier tool to monitor what's going on with all your services, right? So one of the drawbacks to microservices is you become almost more of a sysadmin in terms of monitoring your services. This is a replacement for like what a sysadmin would be doing with Zabbix, right? Or something like you have to start watching more of your services, and your ops person will too, which is why it's important to put them on your cross-functional team. So we were getting errors, right? So this service right here, WS points, it's got a 72.2% error rate, right? What I'm guessing is, let's see what it tells us. Okay, so it's saying it's got too high of an error rate. And let's see if we can actually dig in. Okay, so here's a transaction that's giving us an error. And we should be able to dig in. Now, here's the node. It's going into the node and showing us what's going on. And there was a way once when I clicked on this where it actually showed me the direct error. So if I go back to that again, and I go to this one, I don't remember, events. Let's see if that does it. No, I'm not getting it here. Sorry, it's the new, there. You're definitely the teacher's pet. Let's see if we can get it to tell us, though. I want to actually see, the errors have declined, it looks like. Or the calls per minute have declined. No, but it still won't give us the actual error. There's a way to dig in, but the other tool that I have is log entries. Right, so let's do this now. And now log entries is actually acting as a drain to all of my logs. Right, so what I did is I configured log entries on each one of those nodes and said I want everything that happens in my JBoss user log, the JBoss EAP log, to go into here. So this is a coordinated way for me to look at all the logs at the same time. So I'm going to look at the aggregate view, and I'm going to look at the flat fluffy app server. And that's this group right here. And then I'm going to search for exception. Okay. Am I spelling it right? That's not, there's exceptions right here. I think I have to put on live tail. Let's see if that does it. No, it doesn't do it. Exit live tail. No events found for the query. Oh, you know what I need to, hold on. Okay, it's searching. Does everybody see the little, you can only barely, there's a little, this is a little red spinner down here. So it's searching up all there, right? So there we can get to see some of the exceptions that I pre-tagged beforehand. And what you'll notice is, Most of these are in, oh, but look, it's across 2 different servers. Well, let me scroll it down so you can actually, those in the back can actually see this. This one is against FF user, my user service. This one's against data entry, right? So what you're seeing there is this is actually a coordinated way to look at all of your log files at the same time in a microservice. Good thing this is not production, otherwise I'd have a lot of angry users right now, I think, right? But I can start looking and I can start digging in, right? So I think I can actually, if I remember right, and the demo gods are with me, I can click on that, and it'll give me the context around that exception. Right, so that's because this is one of the big drawbacks to microservices, right? I'm going to have log files being populated everywhere. And so the idea was a tool like log entries. There's other tools on the market. We're partners with them. So I was like, oh, I'll show off a partner technology. But I think they're pretty great. But the idea is you need something that helps you coordinate this big ball of mess. Because there's going to be data pouring out everywhere. There's going to be exceptions. There's going to be monitoring that you have to do that would have been much easier before if this was just one server with 3 different war files in it. Right? So I want to see if this actually, I want to give this one last chance. No. It doesn't show me the other ones. I don't know why it's not picking up the other ones. All right. Well, let me see if I change this to the last 5 minutes. Nope. Okay. And then this one you already saw. So this one I can actually look and see that there's errors with the new kill service, right? So are we getting any? No, I don't think we've seen any in that number. I don't think it updated to anything new. And then in the added new users, we can click on this one, and you can see the queue size and monitor it over. You should be. Come on. Why must you hate me? Actually, I think Firefox. No, it's still loading up top. Did Firefox lock up? The little spinny thing's not spinning, is it? I can't use Safari on a Linux box. Yeah, Firefox is dead. Let's see if we can get my other talk to still show up. Okay. Oh, there we go. It's back. See if, oh, look at that. So we're actually, on that user service, we now have 5,000 sessions. Right? That's how many we've served over time, and there's currently 3, and we've done a session rate of 9 sessions per second. Okay? So let's see actually if anything else comes back. Uh-oh. Let me see if I have to make you all avert your eyes again. So while that's doing that, I'm going to go into this add a new user queue. And so you can see this should be updating to 60 messages per minute, right? And over time, this should increase. So I think if I do this and now it's going down for some reason, but it's going to bounce around, right, as the service, because I put stochasticity in the JMeter stuff. But that still does not picking up all the other tiers, and I don't know why. Maybe I didn't add it to there. No, I had them all there before. Oh, well. I can't show all of it today. But all these tools, the point of these tools, it wasn't to show that I know how to navigate them all really well. The point of these tools was to show that there's actually, when you do microservices, you actually need something to help you manage all these different services running everywhere. And there's tools out there that can do it. And so this is why I wouldn't, like you were, Jason, you said something about using something to monitor before. Didn't you? Didn't he? Guess not. There was something that he said, well, you could use this, and I said, but there are all these services everywhere. I don't, oh well. And so this is actually up here is showing the graph on the top is actually showing you all the messages going back and forth, right? What the message transaction is in your logs. And this is, they have an ability to do a live tail. So you can turn on let's just turn on a live tail for one of them. Turn off. And so this should hopefully give us the live tail for FF user. Live tail. You can do it. All right, I'm done wasting time on the demo because it's not working for me today. It's scrolling down there. I think it's still loading it. So where were we in the talk? How are we doing for time? We have 15 minutes, is that right? How much? Oh, 30? Actually, you know what I'm going to say since we have so much time left? Can everybody just stand up for a second and stretch their legs? An hour and 15 minutes is a really long time to sit. Yeah, so I've been blabbing on now for almost 45 minutes. That's really hard. I mean, I'm not falling asleep because my demos are failing, but oh, there's the live log down below. So it should, at some point, if more stuff starts happening, we should see this scroll for the users. This one's the one that's really bugging me because it's really cool when it works. And is the App Dynamics guy in here with the curly Q mustache? He said he was going to be here. Good thing he didn't show up, huh? I want the... Nope. Still not doing it. All right. This is working. There you can see the message rate, right? Updating over time. And we could do the same thing for other services as well. There. I should have known when they all started going slow. Oh well. Let's see if I can bring up... Do you guys want to see... Will you give me a second to see if the blaze meter will actually show up? Is that okay? To look at the load reports? I mean, some of the things... So I'll talk while that's still coming up. One of the other things that I think is important is some of these tools have overlapping in functionality, which in certain ways ends up being good because for me, I feel like it's a truth test. Okay, there's the system log. Okay, here we go. This is what was not loading before because of the network connection. Who stopped watching YouTube? All right, so this is giving you an overall view of how that test is going. Right, and so we can see we're getting errors here, but we also get to see what's the average response time or the 90% response time, right? So let's actually look at this is showing you the load report. So this is actually showing, we're now at our maximum number of users, so this is being hit by about 2,000 users, which is actually a fairly good number of users to get hit by, right? And then this is the response time, so you can see there's some peaks here. And then I can actually also, I think I can break it down. Yeah, we can see where those peaks are happening. So I get rid of all. So this is actually for the gaming service. There doesn't seem to be any big peaks in the gaming service, right? That seems to be handling well. How about we go to okay, so this is probably which is this one? This is the user service. So there's some peaks here. That could indicate times when OpenShift was scaling up to add another node. Or something else was happening. I don't know. And then this is the one that's all about the kills. Let's take this one off. So posting a kill, this is actually a write service, right? So we're posting. So this one's actually still doing pretty well. So this actually gives us the ability to also look at what's happening. We can go back now and try to coordinate this with log entries or with one of our other services that we're using and say, hey, what was happening? Why did I get this peak right about that time into the test, right? So it does all these kind of fun stuff if you wanted to see them. So is everybody kind of sufficiently impressed if they had a good network connection that would actually be helpful? Right, so do this from your desktop or a good Wi-Fi connection, not a conference. So I'm going to talk a little bit about scaling because I think this is one of the things that microservices talk about. So in OpenShift, we support, who've heard of the 12-factor app? It's a paper put out by Heroku talking about how certain apps should be built. And it's kind of it gets into being able to scale. This is how most of us grew up learning how to deal with scaling issues, right? This is vertical scaling, right? So this is internet load coming in, and we might have started with a little toddler against this little boy that was trying to hold up against the scaling. And so what's our response if we start getting hit by a lot of load? What was our traditional response? I need more RAM. Give me a faster disk. I need more CPUs. Throw a bigger server at it, right? That's vertical scaling. You actually build a bigger box throw another NIC card in there. Our network is swamped, right? So that's vertical scaling, okay? This is horizontal scaling. Right? Sorry to anybody who's afraid of spiders. This spider's dead in this case, right? But the ants are perfect examples of horizontal scalers, right? When they face a problem that's too big for one individual ant, they just throw more ants at the problem. And all the ants are basically irreplaceable. Irreplaceable? No, replaceable. Sorry. I'm a special little ant and no one can replace me, right? All my sisters love me, right? So the basic idea there is there's all these replaceable units and they throw more of them at the problem until they can tackle the problem. And that's horizontal scaling, and that's what microservices allow you to do more easily, right? So if you go back to this one, when we were talking about monolithic scaling, if you need to scale up, you're going to be scaling up bigger. You either scale up that one monolithic server, and if you wanted to do horizontal scaling, you're bringing a whole lot of extra baggage with you. So my roadkill service, let's say let's say my user growth is like this over time, but everybody's going to get more and more active, and let's say they start adding more and more roadkills in, my roadkill entries are going to start going up like this, and so I'm going to need to scale my roadkill service well before I'm ever going to need to scale my user service. Right? And so that's what this allows without having to throw extra stuff at it. So the way we do this in OpenShift is we'd actually have tiers where we have containers and we can scale the containers separately. And so that's why I think a PaaS helps, right? Because this actually happens automatically. No one's having to automatically spin up a new Docker container, right? There's no alarm that goes off that somebody has to then log in and then write some manual thing to get another Docker container and then plug it into the load balancer and do all that stuff. Platform as a service automates this kind of work. And that's why the platform as a service part helps. So for scaling, and actually in microservices in general, avoid sessions. This is the hardest and most controversial thing that I say about scaling. Because most of us grew up with sessions, right? And so what ends up happening is you move away from sessions and you move to client-side sessions, right? You don't want it on the server. Because as soon as the servers need to talk to each other, to store session state, you kill any ability to scale, right? You loosely couple your pieces, right? So what's that? From the diagram before, how did I loosely couple my pieces? You don't get to answer. No. See, that's you buying into some specific technology. There's no need for containers to run. Was it him that said it? And I'm staring at the guy in the hat. Who said it? Yeah. Drummer? Okay. What is the technology that I used in my application that actually allows for loose coupling? No, but good. That was good. That was human readable part. The queue messaging. Who said that? A bunch of people. The asynchronous messaging through my message queue, right? I could shut down one of those other services and the message queue wouldn't die. The message queue might even store them up depending on the type of message queue and bring it back up. So this allows me to loosely couple my pieces, and I can scale each side, and they can respond appropriately with the message queue. So that's the other thing about, as a little aside, what microservices also reminds me of is object-oriented programming. I know functional is all the rage right now, but what microservices reminds me of is each of your service becomes an object, right? And we're basically trying to, the same principles you used when doing object-oriented programming, like the dry principle, right? Clear separation again of concerns and encapsulation. You're doing the exact same thing with microservices again. And I think it comes with some of these same problems that when you go into a heavy object model, you get to as well, right? Things become very complex and hard to keep track of. So this is more important for scaling is you need to design for retries and small pieces failing. Does Google build it so that if one of their one server goes down, the whole thing, Gmail goes down? Okay, that was an easy question. No, thank you. It was only 2 letters also. Basically, you need to build, invest in something like Chaos Monkey. How many of you have heard of Chaos Monkey? Good. For those who haven't, it's the Netflix open source project. Netflix runs almost all, I think actually their entire infrastructure on Amazon, right? And so what happens to Amazon infrastructure? It goes down. Nicely done. In general, the whole thing stays up, but pieces go down all the time. And so what Chaos Monkey does is they wrote a script that goes in and randomly kills running production servers. Just randomly kills them, drops the network on another one. Just takes the network out of control. Throttles the CPU on another one. It just basically goes in and causes chaos in their infrastructure. And they want to, this is their way of testing at the microservices level. Right? Because Netflix is a big microservices user. Spotify is another big, so if you want to also look at companies who've adopted this and they're putting out some stuff on it, Netflix and Spotify, I think, are the two biggest. Amazon, that's true too. Amazon as well. So those three are the biggest that are using microservices internally and have put out papers. Like if you need to convince someone at your company about it, those are the three best use cases. And they've built tools around that as well. Spotify has built a bunch of tools as well. And actually, Spotify has a great blog piece about how they build their teams. Has anyone seen that one? Yeah, some people have. It's a phenomenal blog piece. And it actually, when you read it, you're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense for how software teams should be organized. So you can also say, look, this is an example of something we could try to start with. Okay, so go look for that. Something about Spotify and software teams. And then this is back to your JSON and REST. Who's the guy who said that? Mr. Lumbersexual in the plaid and the beard, like me. I'm trying it for this month. This is the REST and the JSON part, right? Use REST and JSON because you're building web applications. You're using the web. Use the web the way it's supposed to be. And because the web is built for things that come and go and asynchronous talking, right? Sometimes it's synchronous and sometimes it's asynchronous. And use a platform that can scale your load automatically. That's the propaganda pitch right there. So now you're all going to buy OpenShift, right? And I can get paid. Enough talk, back to the demo. We already did the demo, as sad as that was. Microservices has benefits with cloud-type applications. These patterns give more flexibility, resilience, and capacity. I used OpenShift, the propaganda piece, to code rather than manage servers. I used AppDynamics to monitor and improve our application. I used BlazeMeter to drive and test all our services. I used IronMQ as our message to provide loose coupling. I used log entries to centralize logging. So I just wanted to summarize the tools I used. And now I'm going to ask you, what were the three messages? The three big messages that are not up on the slide. No software technology requirements to do, right. Sorry, Drop Wizard guy, you're not as cool as you were at the beginning of the talk. Okay, next. What? Clear boundaries. That was the fun one, right? Okay, but you forgot the middle one. Yes, do not microservices all things. And that's the end of the talk. Thanks, everyone.